Hi, this is Mark Henry, back to talk to you more about issues related to the paranormal and the occult, and hopefully using that information to improve your life. Well, today I want to talk about something a little different. It's something that you would be hard pressed to find unless you were looking really hard. I actually don't feel like it's talked about enough, and that is the subject of muses. Now, what are muses? Well, you may have heard the term in a general sense. Muses, in a general sense, are any source of inspiration. Usually, what you'll find is people, males, saying that a particular female is their muse, is their inspiration for whatever artistic activity that they're involved in. Sometimes you hear this through the mouths of musicians. For example, Jim Morrison said that Pam, his girlfriend, was his muse. But what exactly is a muse? Okay, so if we go back, if we backtrack to the early Greek mythology, we see that there were actual beings, spiritual beings called muses. They were the 9 daughters of Zeus. And each of these muses, these daughters of Zeus, had a particular talent. It could be something in art, could be music, could be healing, prophecy, that sort of thing. These muses were governed and led by the god Apollo, who was an expert in all of these different things. Greek god of the sun, prophecy, music, um, anything you can imagine regarding the arts. Now, when we fast forward into the present and we talk about muses, you'll find some things a little bit different. Well, one is that it isn't just the artists and the poets. You'll find that muses tend to affect all art, all people engaged in the humanities. So you might find philosophers, people doing maybe writing. That's where you find a lot of people who claim to have a muse. So what a muse actually is a particular type of spirit guide that helps the artist, philosopher, poet, whomever, to create wonderful things, to create their best work. They're actually helping to channel things from the spirit world through the person to concretize it into the physical. Pretty heavy stuff. So when we're talking about muses, you'll find examples of this in celebrities, people who are engaged in the arts, but I'll get to that in a second. If we talk about the early Greeks again, when we talk about the philosopher Socrates, we know about Socrates through Plato's dialogues. You'll find in Plato's dialogues Socrates saying that he has a daimon, which is like this guiding spirit. Okay, so what does the guiding spirit do for him? Well, he says that it helps him intelligently debate the sophists, who were the people who were doing a lot of the law, kind of like early attorneys, who were trying to maintain norms. And the sophists in ancient Greece were very much skilled in intelligent debate. And actually, Plato has kind of a negative kind of opinion of them. They're not the nicest of guys. I think if you were to look at the Bible, you would equivalent that they'd be kind of equivalent to the Pharisees. Well, what Socrates claimed was that this daimon, which I consider to be a muse, would help him to philosophize and intelligently debate and win against these sophists, to show how they're not as smart as they think they are, using logic and reason. He also claims what we see in the dialogues of Plato is Socrates listening to his daimon to the point where he would be in a field and it would be raining and having all this type of weather, and he was transfixed, motionless for hours listening to the guidance of his daimon, his muse. He also claimed that it helped protect him, helped to keep him out of trouble. What we know from Socrates is that he got into a little bit of trouble, and ultimately it was kind of the loss to philosophy for his early demise at the time. So we have Socrates. If we go a little bit further, look at the work and life of Carl Jung, Swiss psychiatrist. We have Jung having conversations with this being he called Philemon, which he would have these conversations in his garden. People would observe him. It was like he had this imaginary friend. What's wrong with Jung? Probably they might not have said what's wrong with Jung because they knew Jung and he was a very eccentric type of guy, but a brilliant psychiatrist. Philemon would also help him with his writings. Philemon would give him information on the unconscious, reveal things to him that he could later use to help with his therapy and with his writings, kind of a general source of inspiration. Jung, according to Memories, Dreams, and Reflections, got a lot of comfort from Philemon. Okay, we go further, closer to, into the 20th century, 21st century. What we have Beyonce, who claims to have this, what I consider again a muse, called Sasha Fierce. And Sasha, according to Beyonce, because Beyonce is a little bit of an introvert, not that we could tell because we don't know her personally, because Beyonce's an introvert, that she needed help in order to have a stage presence, to be very engaging and provocative. And that, according to her, is when Sasha Fierce came out, to make her have that energy, to have that charisma that she needed to draw and magnetize and hypnotize people at her shows. And that's one of the characteristics of a muse. What she is actually doing is embodying a muse rather than just communicating. But it can work that way too. Then there are other instances of Michael Jackson, who, as a musician, claims very much the same thing. There is evidence when I've looked at some of the writings of Mozart, same thing. We have, in the genre of horror fiction, we have Anne Rice. Anne Rice stated that with her interview with the vampire and vampire Lestat, that Lestat was actually, in her direct words, is her muse, her lover, someone who would reveal his story to her. Among writers, you'll see this theme, that their characters are their muses, which tell them what is going on, what is the story about, what is happening now. Again, muses are very popular among writers. In fact, the really good writers, many of them won't give credit to their own mind, to their own brain. They give credit to these external muses that come through them and give them their intelligence and their information. And they are just kind of a vehicle, a conduit for this artistic writing. So what does one do if they want to connect with a muse? Okay, maybe there are some artists, some philosophers, some people who need some help with their work in the humanities. Well, the first thing to do is engage in the activity that you are engaging in. Your poetry, your writing, painting, whatever that might be. When you run into a block, pretend like you have a muse. Sometimes pretend and presupposing, acting as if, can start this process of connecting. So if you had a muse, what would it look like? What would it be? Over time, by and requesting that a muse be present. That's a second, I guess, a second technique you can do. It's just a request that your muse come in contact with you for your work. Request it and just wait to see if you get some type of information. At the beginning stages, that would be all that you need to do. Just like any type of spirit guides, because I consider muses a specific type of spirit guides, it's all about developing a relationship. So when you first make contact, if you make contact the first time, don't expect it to be kind of a booming thunder type of spiritual experience, that it may be something subtle, but through time, keep working at it and trying to develop that connection, and things will evolve in that way. So that's basically it. I do have a warning though, because it is easier than people think to connect with these muses. However, I think you have to be engaged in an activity that corresponds to their influence. Here's the warning, is that if you are somebody who is doing some type of writing that or art that is dark, and you are trying to connect with a muse that would help you with that, so you're going to probably connect with a pretty dark muse to help you with that work. Keep in mind that you become what you connect with. So if you are connecting with these dark muses, you are going to become darker. You could get some sort of effects like becoming maybe a little bit more depressed. You could become a little bit more dark in other ways, because the whole purpose of this connection is for you to excel at whatever your artistic medium is. And just like with anything in life, there are consequences. So you might find yourself becoming more dark or having some type of effect that may be unpleasant for you. So really think about what activity you're doing, what you might attract, and if it's worth it in order to improve the work that you're doing. That's essentially it. Please subscribe and like, and I hope to see you in a future video. Hope you connect with your muses.